The Queen, Zozibini Tunzi, is with us today. It's so lovely to see you, Zozi. I feel like you are not only the queen of the universe, but you've actually won Jamaica's heart as well. I don't know if you know that, but I think we've claimed you, okay? So I'm going to be like Miss Universe, Miss South Africa, Miss Jamaica. It is absolutely lovely to see you and feel your energy. You are such a special person. Let's talk a bit about something that I think we all knew on the night that you were crowned Miss Universe. It was something that meant a lot to you, the importance of issues related to gender. I think the world froze and it became a quote that we've all now embraced when you encouraged each girl to take up space and the importance of taking up space. So the issue of gender is not new to you as you have ventured now away from your reign. But let's talk a bit about why you chose to enter into the discussion and be the voice of gender-based violence, and obviously choosing to challenge gender-based violence.
Yeah, for so many reasons. I think the first one, because I am a woman, so these things will affect me whether it is directly or indirectly. They still, affect a huge part of my life. And so that's why I felt it was very important to me. Even before I became Miss South Africa and in Miss Universe, I was always, championing for women, for women's rights, for girls. It's just so important because women are sidelined most of the times in society. And so it's really important for us to raise our voices. And so winning Miss South Africa, I really saw it as an opportunity to use that platform to further that message. The second reason is that I'm from South Africa, and the numbers in gender-based violence and femicide are really, really terrible. We have reports of women dying almost every day. And so I really felt it was important for me as soon as I stepped on the Miss South Africa platform to voice that out. In my top 5 question, actually, at Miss South Africa, I remember I was asked, with everything that's happening in the world today, what reason do women have to keep smiling? And, my answer that I gave, it was really something that came from the heart, because my instinct told me to say, we have no reason to smile, and I audience taking in huge gasps, kind of waiting to hear what I was going to say. What do you mean we have no reason to smile? And then I continued, in telling them that, what reason do we have to smile if we're dying every day constantly and, no one is doing anything about it? No one's taking it seriously. No one's really criminalizing, violence against women. And so that's what really, really now took off at a national stage. And then it went on to the global stage, obviously, when I spoke about, women empowerment, women and young girls taking up space. So it just became, a thing, but it was always there. It was always there.
I think that is the thing that makes it connect the way it does. It doesn't feel like you have said, oh, let me run through a list of A to Z, which cause am I going to choose today? No, it's the amount of passion that you display. Everyone can tell, it's palpable that it comes from your heart, and that's a really beautiful thing. Obviously, we know that gender-based violence is rooted in equality, the abuse of power, and also, the harmful norms, right? How do we begin to create more equal relationships and opportunities for women?
Whenever I think about inequality in the world, especially with gender, it reminds me just of how, firstly, the world is built on patriarchal and misogynist systems. The world was never really built for women to thrive. There was never, and so that's where the problem is. And so in order for us to move forward, we need to stop, looking at the top of what's happening. There's a whole root happening down there. And I think we need to start rooting out the problems from the bottom up. And so in order for us to move forward as a more equal world, we need to go back, dismantle those systems that have been put before us for many, many years. And if we want to get there faster, we need to start acting today. And so what I usually tell people when they say, so how do we dismantle these systems is, well, It's through education at home, education in schools, and education in our communities as well. What I mean by education in schools, what do our curriculums look like? Do young children even know what things like consent are? Do they even know what gender inequality is? When I say education at home, what kind of conversations are we having as families around young boys and young girls? What is the messaging that we are sending? As a young father, what kind of conversations are you having with your son in what it means to live in a gender equal world, and what it means to treat women with respect and as human beings? In our communities, we have our uncles, our friends, our fathers. What conversations are we having there? Are we holding people accountable is another thing, because I feel like accountability is a huge part. And, as communities, we hold each other accountable. So that's how we really, I think, in my personal opinion, we get to an equal world. Deal with the root of the problem, dismantle the systems, and then maybe from there we're able to move forward.
What's interesting is, I think based on what you just shared, and obviously my lived experience as a woman, there are a lot of conceptions that we have accepted and come to believe based on what we've been told from we were little girls until now, right? What are some of the beliefs that you believe we need to challenge that have been almost made to be societal norms that seem absolutely normal in today's world, but looking on as women who are enlightened, exposed, and aware, what are some of the beliefs that we need to challenge?
At the top of my head right now, I will think of the first one is I would really like us to encourage intergenerational conversations. By that, I mean, especially out of where I come from, in a Black community, to sit at the same table with my grandfather and my elders and to tell them about what's happening in the world and to question them is really frowned upon in some spaces, And I feel like those are things that should change, because in order for us to move, we all have to sit down and have these conversations. Our elders are a huge part of our society. And most of the times, because they're the ones who lived before us when these things were a norm, they don't want things to change. For instance, you go report to an elder as a woman that you're being abused in your household, and the first thing that your grandmother will tell you is, you stay there, you fix your family, you fix your home, and endure, these kinds of abuses. And I think those are things that need to change. We need to encourage these conversations, these intergenerational conversations, so that we don't move 10 steps backwards, And I know this is a challenge in most communities as well, where elders are just disconnected from the youth and the youth from elders. So I think that's one thing that needs to change. The second thing that I feel has been a norm that needs to change, and I feel like this one is a very important one, is that whenever we describe women, people will say, you're a strong woman, women are strong, they can take on anything. And I challenge that. I do not like that, because what it means is that women are able to endure so much pain. So it doesn't matter what you put us through, we can take it. That's one thing that we need to, stop putting on women. Women, they don't have to be strong. Let them be fragile. I want to be fragile sometimes. I want to live a soft life and not a life of hardships all the time. My strength shouldn't be measured on how much, pain I can take as a woman. Allow women to be fragile and to not always be seen as like the strength and the rock of the family, because we're not rocks at the end of the day. We're human beings. And that's one thing that's been made a norm about women that really needs to change. Allow women space to be fragile.
I'm listening to you a while ago, and I couldn't help but think that it's already so much that we do to bring forth life. The amount of strength of character and the amount. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but you know, science says that for a man to feel the equivalence of childbirth, the pain in childbirth, he would have to break like every single bone in his body at the same time, and it still wouldn't amass, right? So that's enough of a display of strength. Thank you. I don't need to be strong in society as well. Like, don't force me. Allow me to be. In 1979, the PNP women's movement led the charge for the enactment of a maternity leave with pay act. So other landmark legislation of that decade included Jamaica's Equal Pay for Equal Work Act, but still women receive 37% less than men for the same work. Why do we see women's work as worth less? Not worthless, but worth less than the man's work. Why do you think we are still of this mindset for the most part? As a matter of fact, I'm not going to say we. Let me change that up real quick, because I don't think any of us in this space or in this room think that. But why do you think society as a whole is of that opinion?
And it takes me back to the patriarchal systems that the world is built on. Women were not included in those rooms, you know, when the systems were built, and women are still not included in those rooms today. And so that is the biggest problem, is cutting out such a huge part of the world, a huge part of society, because women bring so much into their communities and into the world, and they're never included in this decision-making rooms. And that is the biggest issue, because if you had women in those rooms when they made those policies and those decisions, surely someone would have said, wait a minute, this does not make sense. But because they probably had a group of men sitting there making decisions over everything, nobody for a second thought, do you think it's okay to not pay women a certain amount, you know, not equally as all of us? And so I think that is a part of the problem. Patriarchal systems and not really including women in this decision-making processes. So that's why we are finding ourselves.
Do you think we need to push harder on the legislative side, or what more can we do to close this gap? And maybe even have the men think differently, so that if they're sitting in the room, they represent a little differently. I'm not sure why the men sit in the room and not realize that their mother and their sister and their daughter is going to be affected by these choices. What do you think, how we close that gap a bit more?
That one is a very difficult one. You know, it's really low. And I honestly don't know if I can come up with one solution where you can make men and people see, you know, the right way. But I have to sit on and think on that one, because it truly is puzzling. I really don't know why we even have to sit here and discuss this. You know, why does it even have to be a situation? It should make sense. If we're doing the same work, let us get paid the same work. I don't even know why there's legislation and policies on, you know, these things that I find very ridiculous. So I don't know. It's a difficult, I don't know how we can make them.
I think it's definitely something that we have to unpack so much more, because the fact that, you know, the act I just read to you was in 1979. And we're still having this conversation, a percentage gap. We really have so much to unpack that I don't think we're unpacking enough in the frontal space. You know, it's like it happens, but then it's put on the back burner for a bit as we just go along with our lives, right? So we have to unpack it. Was there ever a moment for you where your value or your worth was, you know, called into question, where you had to almost be like, hello now, let me put down these, well, what size shoes do you wear? Size 9? Size 8? Let me put down this foot. Oh my gosh, we can share shoes. Okay, now let me find out. I'm coming over. But where you had to put your foot down because your value was called into question, your worth was called into question. Can you share any particular experience with us where that's concerned?
Yeah, I mean, I will remember one particular instance, you know, sharing my views on the world and what's happening on social media, and someone coming up for one saying, first of all, you're a beauty queen, you know nothing about nothing, so stop talking. And it was just, I think it was a statement. I was once again speaking about women and how we need to be taken, you know, seriously in the world. I think I'd shared a video of a young girl who was just showing signs of leadership. And I just put that out there saying these are the kinds of women we need in society to be pushing forward. And this man just comes on, you don't know what you're talking about, and also stop teaching this feminism because it's what's destroying our society, today. So that's just one of those examples, being people not wanting to take you seriously purely because you are a woman. Like what you have to say doesn't really, have any value. Or being an intern or being a student and people walking in and the first people they want to hear from is the men in the room. What do you think about this? What do you think about this? I'm like, we're also here. We have thoughts. And we just want to ask everyone, what's happening here. So I think like many women, we've all had situations where we've been overlooked. People just walk past you, not even giving it a thought, and just looking for the men in the room. So yeah, I've definitely had a couple of
what's
encounters.
really interesting is I will share with you obviously hindsight is 2020 as they say, right? But I always knew I wanted to go into this world, the world of media, the world of pageantry, the world of modeling. I always knew that. But I also always knew that if I went down that road, my intelligence would immediately be questioned. And I am going to confess here and now to you and this room filled with women that I only did my master's degree so that when I entered a room, people wouldn't assume that I was just resting on the laurels of my image and that I actually had substance. So it's almost like, oh, letters are behind my name, take me seriously. Where with hindsight, I'd have never done that. That's a year of my life I can't get back. And I didn't want to do it, but I felt the need as a woman going into this industry to be able to prove that I brought more to the space than just trying to smile and be a pretty face and be a pageant girl. So it's amazing that you mentioned that someone is saying to you, what you know about this, you're just a beauty queen.
How do you then correlate beauty with intelligence? Who came up and said you cannot, beauty and intelligence at the same time? Because beauty is subjective. Let's start there. Anyone is beautiful, depending on who's looking and depending on exactly what it is that makes them beautiful. And it's a whole other topic. It's a whole other something that needs to be tackled. But it's interesting that you had to go and do all of that, mainly because you are a woman. Actually, this is interesting because I was speaking to Chesley, former Miss USA, who was my, and because she's a lawyer, I think I asked her, would you go into politics? And she was like, girl, no, one, I'm not interested. But even if I was interested, I wouldn't be able to because there's so many photos of me out there in a bikini. And then my response to her was, that's very interesting because you have a man in politics over there whose name I shall not say because who's listening, who is out there in politics and was a former Mr. Something and a model who has tons and tons of topless photos, and as an actor as well, but he's doing his job. Why is it going to be a problem for you if it wasn't for him? And it just reminded me, about that. But yeah, these are the reasons why we're here today, struggling with gender inequality and all its root problems like gender-based.
Well, I guess this is where we are coming together, right? We're coming together in this shared space of wanting to drive change and wanting to push us forward, even further. Here I am almost 20 years later, and I'm just like, if only I had the knowledge I had then now, I would have done it so differently. So we're driving the change, and the question though is it too late to redefine the power and the dynamics between men and women so that, even the way we're perceived is not that, even the way that we are received is not in a box that we've been placed in? Is it too late for us to shift this, the power and the dynamics?
Never. I don't think so. It's never too late, which is why I said if we want to see change, we need to start today, no later than today. When I bring children into this world, I need to make sure that I'm preparing them for a world that I envision. And that's exactly the change that's needed. There's a statistics with the United Nations and UN Women suggest that we're looking at about 108 years before we can reach a gender equal world. And for me, it is like the most ridiculous number, because I feel like if we tried really hard and if we started today with young children right now, they are the ones who are going to grow up to be leaders in societies tomorrow and in the future. And, we are the ones to change this dynamics. And so why not start today? Why not start preaching the word today? And so I don't think it's too late. I think things can definitely change because, if we look back to 30, 60 years from now, there has been some change. I will speak at a South African context, when I think of when the women of 1956 who marched to what we know as the Union buildings for women's rights, they had that mind back then in 1956. So it means that it's possible that they lay out a foundation for the next generation to come. And so I'm walking into the foundation that they laid. And so as a woman, I feel it is really my responsibility. And not just as a woman, really, I feel like everyone existing today should feel that responsibility to pick up that torch that those who came before us left behind. I'm sure in Jamaica as well, there's women who have done incredible things in the past who are really just holding that torch and baton for the next generation to pick it up and do the work as well. And so for those reasons, I don't think it's too late. The world changes, the world evolves. I just hope it won't take us.
I agree with you, because I would love to see it happen in my daughter's lifetime, so I can sit down on my porch and look at her coming home with equal or more salary than her husband, and I can be like, oh, I remember when I spoke with Zozi and we said the world is going to be different in less than 108 years, and here we are. But that torch that you're referring to, I feel like, I don't know if it is just a culmination of everything that is happening in the world right now and in the past year, but I feel like that torch has received an outpouring of gasoline or something that's making it spark really brightly and burn even more intensely than it's ever burned. And I genuinely feel in my gut that this generation is going to make some serious strides. I feel it.
I agree. They call, the millennials and now Generation Z that is stepping in, Gen Z, as they call it in other places. We're known to be the stubborn generations who, and usually they say it in bad taste, you guys are so stubborn. I'm like, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Maybe it is the stubbornness that we need in order to move forward and transform our world as we know it. And so I absolutely agree with you. And I always tell people, it's not bad. It's not bad that we're stubborn. It's not bad that we want the world, to change.
That's right. Why not? With a capital W and a capital N and a huge question mark. Why not? Yeah. Your advocacy itself, the work that you have been doing, tell us about some of the impact that you've seen happen with your advocacy around gender-based violence.
My first one was really working with UN Women with their He for She campaign that they have running. So it was, it was such an honor for me to be able to join onto that campaign and to spread the message of really not just letting women champion women's rights, but saying this is not a woman issue. It is actually a humanity crisis and everyone should be a part of it. And so that's what the He campaign was about, and saying, actually, men, don't move away too quickly. You're also a part of this. So you need to be a part of the solutions that we are trying to find. And so it's really been, like I said, an honor being a part of this campaign with UN Women, but also being a part of Nala Feminist Collective, which is a group of 17 women from across Africa and the diaspora, where we say, you know, generation equality and gender equality cannot afford to move forward, you know, without women's voices, and especially, you know, in the African context, African women. And so that's the work that I've really been doing, because I feel like we really, really need it. So internationally, I'm working with UN Women, and then in the African continent with the Nala Feminist Collective, into saying, enough talking, enough of, you know, people sitting and saying we need to see change, we need to see change. Change actually needs to happen. And so those are the advocacies that I've been working with. And like, again, I'm so proud, you know, to be a part of those two groups of incredible.
Yeah. You mentioned a while ago, you know, saying to the men, no, don't come out the room. We need you. You need to be a part of this. How can men choose to challenge gender-based violence?
The biggest thing is accountability. I always tell them that you guys need to hold yourselves accountable, because the first thing that usually comes out of men is, I'm not abusing women. I'm not a part of the problem. Not all men are doing this. And that for me is the biggest issue, because you might not be doing this, but your silence in the face of this violence is a part of the problem. It is doing more damage than it is doing good. And so that is what I mean by that. You know, if you're not doing it, surely you know someone, you know a friend who's doing it, you know a colleague, your father, your uncle. Are you holding them accountable for the things that they're doing?
So we don't all need to wear a crown to choose to challenge, even though some do, but we all don't. But how can women who choose to challenge gender-based violence in regular, everyday moments, what do we do as women in our lives as we go about our days?
Yeah, you're absolutely right in saying you don't have to stand on a global stage in front of millions of people to change the world. The little bit that we each do, when it comes together, it becomes something huge. So play your part where you can, in your homes, you know, in your communities. If you're able to uplift a woman, if you are in like a corporate space and you're the only woman who's there, maybe you can try bringing on other women into that space. Maybe you could try and support women, because we have what we call pull her down syndromes, you know, where women feel threatened when another woman steps into the space. That's not the mentality that we need to be having, because we need more women at the table. So if you have a chance to get there, leave that door open so that other women are able to climb in behind you. So those are the little things that you can do to empower, you know, women. And if you want to challenge gender-based violence as well, and I know this is such a difficult thing to say, but if you are someone who's brave enough to tell your story, tell it without hesitation. Because by telling a story of violence, you are giving someone else, you know, the permission to also come forward, because we find that women are so scared of coming forward and speaking out because of judgment, because people won't believe you, because our policies, our legislations are not protective of women. And so if you are that woman who is brave enough, and no one is forcing you to, because you don't have to be a hero with your story, but if you're someone who is, and who is brave and who has found, you know, bravery in themselves to do it, then do it, you know, because you don't know who's listening, you don't know who you're helping out by doing what you're doing. So there's so many ways, you know, women can help each other out. But I will say, it is mostly really not up to women, because they are doing their part as much as they can. They're doing their part. I could never sit here and be like, yeah, women are not doing enough, because why should they, when they are the ones who are the victims and the perpetrators are out there living their best life.
And even in that application, there are a couple other scenarios that we can think of that fits perfectly. Like, we're not the perpetrators here. You guys need to do some work, but we won't get into that part. But last year showed us that big time. So what is the word or the message that you will say to our women sitting here today? What do you want us all to go forward and do from being a part of this conversation?
What I truly want women to live with here today is to not get tired. It's so easy. It's so easy to get tired, especially as an activist, especially as someone who uses your voice for the betterment of the world. There's so many times where you get discouraged and you ask yourself, is this even really worth it? You feel tired because the world is letting you down, is letting us down so much. Sometimes you want to break down, close the doors, and just not do anything. That's okay. Do that for a little while. If you feel like you need to step back from the world and all its horrors, step back, recharge, but then come back and fight even harder, because we need those voices. We really, really need these women to push forward these messages that we need out there. So that would be my message. Just don't get tired. Take a break when you need to. Take a breather. Get close to loved ones. Feel that love, because sometimes it is what we need to recharge. But then step back and make sure that you continue.
I love that. Love that. Ooh. Okay, now Zozi for president. Hello.
Whoa. You know how many people ask me that, and I'm like, I know.
You know what? Never say never, though. Never say never. So at this moment, there is a transition happening within the PNP women's movement. So I think, even the fact that there is, again, the torch that we referred to earlier, the passing of the torch to the incoming president, the message of encouragement maybe to the movement and to the work that is being done and to the incoming president.
Of course. I mean, to the PNP women's movement, firstly, thank you so much for the work that you do. It is necessary and it is needed in the world. There's not a lot of platforms where women's voices are heard, and so for you guys to be able to come together and to fight for such an incredible cause is such a beautiful thing to be able to do, to give your time, to give your expertise and your wisdom and voices to this movement that we all appreciate so much is truly magical. And I'm thankful for you. I'm sure Jamaica is thankful for you and the world is thankful for you. And to the incoming president, congratulations. And I hope that you continue doing the incredible work that has been put forward before you. I always say as women, it's so important to acknowledge those who came before us, to pick up that torch. They ran their mile and they did that work. And so now when you pick up that torch, it's up to you to continue, doing this incredible work. So I hope that you have stamina for it. I hope that you never get tired. And yeah, just continue doing this amazing work in the world. I, for one, am proud of you and very, very grateful for you.
Zozi, thank you so very much. Thank you so very much for being, first of all, just such a wonderful light in this world and in this space. Thank you for using your voice and your platform. And thank you for being exemplary. I feel like each person looking on in admiration of you can feel motivated and inspired to just take one step closer in the direction that we need to be going. So I really, really appreciate you sitting here and sharing with us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Yendi, for having me and just for your wisdom as well. And just being able to share in the knowledge together has been really wonderful. Thank you so, so, so much.